Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we are talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. Yes! The Battle of the Titans, the fight of the century, has finally arrived in theaters everywhere, and it's doing surprisingly well, by the way. The biggest budget, made a bunch of money, right? That's the deal.
That's right. Biggest budget, biggest blockbuster of the pandemic.
Yeah, which hasn't been happening. I probably shouldn't have tried to swing into that in my intro if I wasn't actually ready to say anything. We're also going to take a look at Netflix's Concrete Cowboy, new Idris Elba film that just premiered over there. It's currently number 2 in the United States on Netflix. We're excited to talk about that movie. We're going to look at some things that are coming up soon in a segment we haven't done in over a year, so long ago. In fact, I forgot we even did this as a segment until Andy reminded me, so that'll happen in between our reviews. And before we get to all of that, of course, we talk about the news. First things first. What's going on with Knives Out, Andy? What do you know about this story? Knives Out 2 and 3, yeah, something.
So, in a historic move, Knives Out, the sequel to Knives Out, struck a big deal with Netflix to produce 2 sequels, so Knives Out 2 and 3, for upwards of $450 million. So, a huge deal for the big whodunit.
Yeah, it was definitely surprised to see Netflix was swooping in on this, right? I mean, originally we assumed it was going to be what Sony did the last one, right?
I don't remember, but yes, it was a theatrical exclusive.
Yeah, and now suddenly Netflix is getting in on this. This is interesting because Netflix obviously is trying to build out their content library a bit. I get that they already have a lot going on, but they want some premiere stuff. And Knives Out 2 and 3 is definitely, premiere movie product, I think. But there's a lot of money to throw around at 2 sequels, right? That may not have the same fervor as the original. Maybe Netflix knows something we don't.
Right. Well, I actually read another story that just came out today in the Hollywood Reporter that talked about how this deal came about. And one thing is that they were a little worried about theater exclusivity because of coronavirus, and so then whoever owns the rights to it began shopping it to the streamers, and that's when Netflix kind of pounced on it. And they admit that they are overpaying for the property, but with all the streamers you have to front load the purchase because there are no back end ticket sales. You can't count on what it's gonna do in the back end in the box office, so you got to pay a premium up front.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning on the side of this, by the way, Rian Johnson is still reportedly working on his Star Wars trilogy. I don't know if you remember from way back when they were making Star Wars movies. Yeah, they gave Rian Johnson the next trilogy of films following episodes 7, 8, and 9. It's supposed to be its own thing. But after his work on 8, they were like, we want you to do more, and went with that. Now, you'd think, based on audience reaction, Disney would be leaning away from doing any more work with Rian Johnson. But no, according to this, he's still actively working on a Star Wars trilogy that he's writing all on his own. And I'm not sure about directing, but I mean, assumedly, running the board for. So this guy is doing something right. It's not just, okay, this dude who had a couple hits is making a couple movies on Netflix. These companies are getting invested in him and what he's doing. So I'm looking forward to it, I guess. I actually really enjoyed Knives Out. I don't know if you remember from way back when we did our review, but it's a surprisingly American film. Right now it's shooting in Greece. I'm interested to see where they're taking it and what's going to happen with that series. I know it follows Daniel Craig's Benoit Blanc. Do we know anything else about it, right? Other than shooting in Greece?
That's all we know is that it will star Benoit Blanc, and it'll be another whodunit. Now we remember some details from that other article. So now that things are starting to turn around and people are going back to theaters, it seems like studios are really leaning on their blockbuster properties with their big Marvel films, Star Wars, whatever else, and they're kind of leaning away from mid-budget films, which is what this is. And so that was part of the reason it went to a streamer, because streamers are a little bit better known for supporting mid-budget films.
Yeah, worth mentioning. I threw this up while you were talking because we can actually put Facebook comments on stream every once in a while. Jordan pointing out Rian Johnson's next 3 Star Wars movies could not possibly be worse than the last 3 Star Wars movies. Thank you for that, Jordan. I agree.
I'm so excited for him to do his own, because I will agree that The Last Jedi doesn't fit in well with that whole trilogy, but I do think it is the strongest of those films, and I think it's one of the best Star Wars films ever made. And I think if he has the kind of creative control to just tell his story from beginning to end, I think we'll get a great series.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. Last Jedi is not all that bad. I think people it looks worse in the rear view than it actually is because of the films it's sandwiched between. Last Jedi is a surprisingly solid Star Wars movie. Yeah, I'm interested to do this too. I want to know more about Knives Out 2 and 3. I guess good for Netflix, man. Like, good for them getting their money's worth. More on this story, keep it here on Off Script. We'll tell you more as we find out things. Next up, speaking of new directors, Ava DuVernay making headlines this week with her film New Gods, along with James Wan's The Trench. Movies for DC are not actually happening at Warner Brothers. Originally, these two directors were supposed to be making a couple DC movies. Now they're not. What is this about, Andy?
So Ava DuVernay was supposed to make this film called New Gods, which was a DC property that dealt with kind of these alien beings, including Darkseid, who we met in Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as Big Barda and Apocalypse. And it's very otherworldly, very deep into like comic book lore. The problem is that DC doesn't really know what they're doing or what direction they're going in, and they just don't know where to put this kind of film. They don't know where to put it in their slate because basically DC is very reactionary. When things are bad, they react one way, and then when things are good, they kind of also react. And so they don't really have a plan, and they just didn't really know where to put this film. And the same thing goes for The Trench, which is the kind of horror offshoot spinoff of Aquaman that was supposed to happen as well.
Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise for a couple reasons. One, because you'd think DC would be putting things together by now. You'd think they have a plan. Joke's on you, they don't. Two, both of these are really solid directors. Ava DuVernay has done a lot of really fantastic work for the Black community. She's made a lot of really tremendous films. We watched a few on this show. Selma 13 was a really great documentary on Netflix. A Wrinkle in Time was my least favorite by her, but she didn't actually write that one, so James Wan, meanwhile, is kind of heading up the Fast and Furious franchise. So, like, you'd think you'd want that fast energy, like, behind a DC movie, but here we are. I think it's a mistake to kind of shelve these ideas. I think maybe they're trying to aim for more mainstream stuff because these are definitely both odd. But, like, I think of, like, the success of Shazam, right? Like, a movie that ultimately probably should not have popped nearly as well as it did, totally working. Like, there's no reason these couldn't happen. And I think you're right. It's reactionary. Personally, I think it's reactionary because they're seeing that Snyder Cut buzz and they're like, hold on a second. We need to start working out a strategy.
See, exactly. This is what I mean. Like they something goes bad and they do a knee-jerk reaction. Same thing when things go good. The other thing that's kind of mentioned in this article is that because New Gods dealt with Darkseid as a main character, they kind of didn't want him coming up so soon after coming up in Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, and that's
which is kind of petty, but.
Yeah, of course it's petty. The whole thing with DC is saying like the Snyderverse stuff isn't going to matter. The Snyder Cut doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It's not canon. And then suddenly deciding afterwards, well, hold on, Darkseid was in that a whole lot. People might get confused. Then it matters, right? Like that you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to pick a direction, stick with it. They don't seem to be able to do that here. So I don't know what the plan is, but it doesn't seem to involve these two pretty solid directors.
Yeah, and it's I mean they had written a script for New Gods, like they had completed a script, which is really an exciting point to get to. So it kind of sucks that they're not going to move forward with it.
Yeah,
but that's just how it goes sometimes.
That's just the way it goes. Yeah. For more DC news, keep it here on Off Script. For more, our last story this week: Godzilla vs Kong has been crushing the box office. This headline says Godzilla vs Kong defeats pandemic with $48.5 million US starts, almost $300 million globally. Andy, it finally happened. Mission accomplished. Godzilla vs Kong has done it. Almost 50 million in the US though is nothing to scoff at, man. That hasn't happened since like 2019, right?
Yeah, the biggest opening we've had over the pandemic was Wonder Woman 1984, which was about 16 million. And then after that, Tenet at like 9 or 10 million, although they kind of fudged the number. So yeah, this is huge. This is the biggest opening we've had. And the other thing that's notable is that this premiered on both HBO Max and in theaters. And people saw, they watched it on both mediums a lot. Like it was a huge hit on HBO Max and also in theaters. So it's saying a lot about this hybrid release.
Yeah, I saw an article from that third-party streaming like statistic company Samba. They're like Nielsen, I think, or something like that. They said it got like a ton of play on HBOMax, like a lot. I don't think it got as many plays as like Wonder Woman 84, but that was Christmas Day. That was a different thing. This is Easter weekend. People got nowhere to be. They got that sweet HBOMax subscription, which is basically like a digital ticket to the box office in 2021. Like, come on, you're gonna watch yourself some Godzilla v Kong. I don't think I don't know. I don't want to say I'm surprised by this, but I kind of am, honestly. Maybe we've just been doing this whole like staying away from the theater too long thing. But it's surprising to see this many people are starting to get back into it. But those vaccines are coming around, right? Like it's time.
It's kind of a perfect storm of the vaccine is becoming much more widely dispersed, and lots of people are vaccinated and getting vaccinated, so they're more comfortable going to the theater. Also, we've been cooped up for a year, haven't really gotten a chance to go, and there was always going to be one movie. There's going to be something that was going to get people, or that was going to be the hit, and it happens to be this. And I just think poor Chris Nolan rolling over in his grave, because he was hoping to be the one to save cinema when Tenet came out in August. And that didn't happen at all. And here it is, Godzilla v Kong.
Don't you wish you could hop in a trans-dimensional spaceship and fly to a different dimension where Tenet comes out on Easter instead of this, and genuinely is the thing people are talking about? Because I wish Tenet had that buzz. There were so many people when we saw Tenet who would try to talk to you about it, and they were like, "What movie is this? I don't even know what you're talking about."
See, that's a problem. I don't know if Tenet had come out now, I still don't think it would have done as well as Godzilla v Kong.
Yeah,
like you're benefiting from name recognition and action.
That's very true. And Tenet was definitely not big on like, hey, here's our star-studded cast, whereas this is like, it's in the freaking title. It's Godzilla versus Kong. You know exactly what you're getting. And with that, we should jump into exactly what we're getting. I'm excited to talk about Godzilla v Kong, but before we get into the formal review, really quick, worth mentioning, Andy and I both went to a movie theater to see this. And I do want to talk about the theatrical experience, because we've gone a couple times since the pandemic has been underway. It's been very quiet. This time, though, was the busiest I've seen a movie theater since 2019. It's bananas. Andy, you want to weigh in on your experience, or should I jump in first here?
So yeah, it was exciting to be back in the theater, and we were in the big, like 500 seat auditorium at our Cinemark. And there were all the staples. There were people talking. There were people on their phone. The movie didn't work initially.
That's right. Yeah.
But when things got underway, and we're on the giant screen, it didn't really matter.
Right.
It was a good time.
You're 100% right. Before we get into the review, it's worth mentioning Godzilla v Kong is hands down worth watching in a movie theater. There's no way it's as good on HBOMax. Like big monsters swinging at each other. You should see that in a theater if possible. Obviously, wherever you live, things are going to be safe, but I'd say maybe go try it out. You got to wear a face mask the whole time. We went to Cinemark for what it's worth, so if you're looking for policies. And also, Cinemark's prices, I think, are back up to what they used to be.
They're definitely a little bit pricier than they had been.
It sucks. It is, dude. Already buying tickets online, it was almost $14 a pop for like a standard theater. Like, we didn't go to IMAX or anything. Like, it's a standard theater. It was like a Sunday night showing. It was $14, and then you get a drink on top of that, and a large drink is $5. Boom, you're at like $20. Like, it'll mess you up, man. You had people. Movie didn't start on time. That was good. Also, people clapping at the end. That was weird.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah.
I don't mind that. Like, I don't clap after movies, but I know a lot of people do, and some people think it's really dumb and annoying, but I always think it's endearing, and I'm glad that people had a good time. So I was kind of glad to hear it.
This is going to be counterintuitive to my actual feelings on the review of the film. I think clapping at the end of this movie was dumb. Like, come on. It's not The Passion, for God's sake. Like, it's Godzilla v Kong. You don't have to clap. Like, who are we applauding?
People
CGI?
had a good time.
Yeah, and it's been a while since people have been in the theaters, but yeah. Anyway, let's jump into the movie. I'm excited to talk about it. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one. Andy's got Concrete Cowboy towards the end of the show. The movie is Godzilla v Kong. So Godzilla versus Kong is the ultimate battle of the monsters, the next chapter in the cinematic monsterverse that's pitting two of the greatest icons in motion picture history against one another. From Toho in Japan, Godzilla weighing in at 100 billion pounds. And from Skull Island, somewhere off the coast of South America, we have King Kong weighing in at like another 100 million pounds. The movie takes place in modern day, whereas Kong Skull Island was set in the 70s. This is set now, very close to immediately following the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters, which came out in 2018, I think. In this movie, Godzilla attacks a tech lab off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, out of nowhere. And in this universe, the world is not only okay with Titans being around, but they've accepted Godzilla as kind of this all-powerful guardian of man who will never actually hurt people. But now suddenly Godzilla's mad and nobody knows why, but the US government has to respond. So they hire some folks out of South America to put King Kong on a boat, wheel him over here chock full of sedatives and chained up to a giant boat, and fight Godzilla, except not in America, in Hong Kong, in an LED filled Hong Kong.
They're trying to get King Kong home, or to like some like pit that, you know, there's this whole thing about Hollow Earth, and they're not taking him to fight Godzilla initially. It just kind of happens.
That's kind of true. Yeah, you're right. Technically, they're trying to figure out why Godzilla's mad, so
the
King
plot
Kong is going to help them figure
the plot
that out.
doesn't really matter. I don't know why I'm correcting you.
It's a little true. Yeah. And what this movie does is give us actually a couple of monster movies, right? It's not just Godzilla v Kong. It's a Godzilla movie. It is actually, believe it or not, fundamentally more of a King Kong movie than it is a Godzilla movie. And it's also just a little bit of Journey to the Center of the Earth, which is really cool. I guess I'm excited to jump into it. Andy, what did you think of Godzilla v Kong?
So it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a big monster movie, Clash of the Titans kind of thing. There are big monster fights, lots of action, lots of CGI, inconsequential plot. There's a few too many human characters, and there's a particularly annoying subplot of a comic relief trio, which we'll get into. But overall, it works. Tons of action. Like, you're going here to see big monsters slug it out and destroy cities. That's exactly what they do. It's a good time. It's a little long, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I actually enjoyed this one a lot. This is maybe my favorite of all of these most recent like monster movies. I think I like this more than the two other Godzilla films and Kong Skull Island, because of a couple fundamental things it does really, really well. And the main one is putting the spotlight on the monsters pretty much all the time. Like, I feel like over 50% of the screen time in this film, there's a monster on screen. Like over half, and like that's worth something, you know, because ultimately I'm going to the theater to be childish and watch monsters smash stuff, and it totally works. And a lot of times in these movies, you get bogged down in the characters and the people. And this movie has those pitfalls, but ultimately the action, the monster stuff, rises out over the top of it. It's like going to see a horror movie where the plot's dumb, but it's got really good scares. Like, it's hard to say it's a bad time. So let's jump into what makes this movie work, what makes it not work. First things first. Our general plot, because it's a little confusing, and we don't do spoilers on this show, but Andy, you want to take a swing at what exactly is going on here, at least up to a point?
Yeah, so there's a lot, which is kind of an issue. We have King Kong on Skull Island, which has been, I guess, taken over by the storm that surrounds the island. And so for some reason they say, you know, we got to move Kong. He's not going to survive here. But also, if we move Kong, Godzilla's going to know, just because he's going to know. Like, it's not really ever explained. And so there's also this third issue of, you know, someone brings up the Hollow Earth theory, where there's like, there's actually like living area within the Earth, and that's where Kong is from. That's where he needs to go back to. So they sedate Kong, who knows how, put him on a boat.
It happens off screen very conveniently.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of real important things happen off screen.
Yes.
But they have to take him to Antarctica there's a pit, or there's an entrance to this Hollow Earth place. See, already the plot's a little convoluted. On the way there, Godzilla shows up, but also Godzilla had attacked some
tech lab in Florida.
Tech lab, right. Kind of for no reason. They don't really know why. So these are the main two plots, but there's also a slew of human characters, which I'm going to pull up right now because I didn't have it ready.
Oh God, yeah.
But Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Isaac Gonzalez, Julian Dennison, like Kyle Chandler, Damian Bashir, like, and basically they're all playing stock characters. You got the research scientists, you got the the business mogul,
right? You've got the struggling father, you have the misunderstood child, you have the errant podcast host.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you have Millie Bobby Brown playing Millie Bobby Brown. Like yes. MBB is there to just so you could say, hey, she's from Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning both the movies we're talking about on this episode feature children from Stranger Things as the main characters. That's kind of an interesting point. Yeah, so the thing that works really well, the thing that doesn't work about this plot, because Andy's pretty much got it right. We have to move Kong off of Skull Island to another place because not necessarily because Godzilla is mad, but in a totally different set of problems. Godzilla is mad, and Godzilla will get mad at Kong when Kong is not on Skull Island, and they will fight. So that's kind of what's going on here. We got to get Kong off Skull Island. Stuff goes south. What's effective about this is you've given us a reason to follow Kong through the film. Kong comes with the humans. So wherever the humans go, Kong is coming with. We now have like our party. We now have our band of heroes that we're following, and Kong is one of them. In fact, the film opens on Kong. Within seconds, we get King Kong on screen, and then like 10 minutes later, Godzilla's on screen. It's very efficient that way. It gets right to the monsters, right to the goods. And now we have a reason throughout the entire film to have a monster with us, a monster that's sympathetic, a monster we can engage with, a monster that we have a character who can communicate with Kong. This little girl who's grown up on Kong Island, on Skull Island, has a way of kind of like feeling out how Kong feels. It's basically sign language, but so we can get a little bit of Kong being sad or Kong being mad or whatever, and this plays off well against Godzilla, who is pitted as kind of our villain. We don't really get to see him. He's kind of just under the water in the ocean until he rises up and blows something up and then goes back under. You gotta step away from a lot of the logical leaps in this movie, because in this monsterverse, in the world of Godzilla and Kong here, not only are we flying around like Tron spaceships, like that are from some completely alternate future that isn't real, but also the world just acknowledges that these monsters are real and really doesn't do anything to fight them. Like you see at a couple points, they have like Titan shelters. You see that in the Florida stuff when Godzilla's trampling Florida in the opening of the film. You see people running to these like Titan shelters, but nobody is bothering to shoot a gun or aim a missile at Godzilla at all. They don't even try, because they know Godzilla will destroy everything if he feels like it. So better just not make him mad. Yeah, Kong is kind of in the same boat. Humans don't stand a chance. So it's a whole lot of like, hey, let's just step back and let these guys duke it out. Except, of course, in the case of Kong, who were able to cage, sedate, and shackle all the way from South America to Antarctica. I don't know why, but that's the way this movie works. It's some leaps in logic, but a good reason to watch monsters.
Yeah, and eventually this all leads up to big fights. Godzilla eventually senses Kong across the globe and that he's out.
Of course.
They meet up. There's a big boat fight that I'm sure you've seen in the trailers, and we get a couple of other clashes. Some interesting stuff, and there's the Hollow Earth thing comes into play as well. That part I actually thought was really interesting. I wish we would have spent more time there. But you're that's exactly what you're signing up for. You want to see the big monsters go at it.
Right. And that's the stuff it does really well, because it's, I mean, maybe 30 minutes into 25 minutes in the film, you're getting your first big monster fight. And it's good stuff. We've already seen both of our monsters on screen. Our two title fighters are presented very early in the film. Godzilla's already blowing up Florida. Kong's already on Skull Island. And then you get the two of them actually swinging at each other. And it's so good, dude. Like the monster action in this movie is fantastic, because it feels like a little kid holding like action figures, just smashing them into each other. And that's exactly what it should feel like. Like, it's fun and it's cool and they're huge. And also worth mentioning, I know we'll talk about music towards the end. The sound design in this movie is stunningly good. These monsters feel so legit, and they got it like when Godzilla whips his tail around, you hear the tail like fly by you above you in the theater, and like Kong's got this deep rumble roar, and when he pounds on, like it all sounds so awesome. And sound design is a huge part of making a monster movie effective. So worth mentioning, if you're watching this at home, please, for the love of God, have a good sound system because it's really good work.
Yeah, like you have so much. That's why you got to see it in the theater. There's a giant, you got to be on the big screen. You got to have the larger than life sound. It's just not. I don't care how good your home theater is. It's not going to be as good as going to the big theater. Right. Yeah, like I said, the only kind of downside are the human subplots, which there's just kind of way too many characters. And the thing is, they're trying to shove everyone from all the previous movies into this one. And some characters aren't here, and then also a bunch of people that we haven't seen in a while are. So it's kind of a strange thing.
Yeah, the performances I felt like were really weak all across the board. In a little because it has the same problem Kong Skull Island has too many characters and it's trying to juggle too much. And I don't understand why these movies do that. I think it's to make it feel global. It's to make it feel grand and epic. Like, oh, we have 14 leads we have to juggle here, but it just ends up feeling jumbled. And it feels like people don't have enough like value in the actual script to justify being there. I mean, like you said, we've got like a comedy trio in this film with Millie Bobby Brown, Brian Tyree Henry, and Julian Dennison. Like none of them actually need to be in the film. They have very little impact on the actual course of the film. In fact, most of these characters don't, because ultimately nobody swings on Godzilla and Kong. Like nobody can.
No.
That's it. They don't even shoot at them in this movie. A couple times you get like some distractions to try to distract Godzilla, but like humanity has no dog in the fight. And that's cool because we get so much time with the monsters, but like also it makes all our human characters feel pointless. I think Gareth Edwards with Godzilla back in 2016 did this really well. I don't know if you remember that movie, but Bryan Cranston was kind of our lead. And it turned out that was a bit of a false flag for us to really be focused on the guy who played Kick-Ass, Aaron Taylor Johnson. And it's like the two of them. And like, that's it. The whole movie's told from the ground. It feels very grounded, like very, very realistic. And Godzilla is this very big problem that we're always looking up at. These movies go the opposite way. They give us a ton of characters and they make it feel like it's supposed to be this thing that's big and grand and scale, but ultimately none of them really feel, I don't know, valuable.
Yeah, I was going to say there was a notable missing. They usually have like a token Chinese or Asian character that was missing this time around, this is probably the time that you wanted to have that.
Hold on. Yeah, they have one. He's he's one of the, well, okay.
Wait.
No. Yeah.
Yes. No, you are correct.
Yeah,
sorry,
they 100% have a token Eastern actor.
Yes. That's true. Sorry. Yes. Well, what I was thinking is that there's people missing. Namely, Zhang Zi. She was in The King of the Monsters. She's not in this one, and that's what I mean. There's like a bunch of characters from the other films that they were shoving into this one, and then other ones that they weren't. It was kind of weird how they kind of chose that.
Yeah, like Alexander Skarsgård's character. Alexander Skarsgård is supposed to be the lead in this film, and he's not only like phenomenally uncharismatic, but he's really unmotivated. His character kind of makes decisions that like don't really make a lot of sense, but that just moves the plot along because we don't really care about the people. But at the beginning of the film, he is a professor who has written a book about this hollow earth theory, right? That's kind of how he ends up getting recruited into this mission. And he mentions like a brother of his who died investigating the hollow earth or something. And after the movie, I asked Andy, I was like, hey, who was that? Was he one of the previous movies? And you were like, I don't think so. Like, I don't even remember at this point. I feel like he was just supposed to be Tom Hiddleston from Kong Skull Island, but they couldn't get Tom Hiddleston back. So they were like, here, we'll stick in some other relatively charismatic, handsome looking man.
The other problem with that movie is, Kong Skull Island takes place in the 70s. So you can't have any of those characters be in the movie 50 years later.
Right. That does give us the opportunity to have some developments around Kong and Skull Island, which this movie takes advantage of. But ultimately, trying to mash the two together is pretty successful if you're not too busy looking at the seams. Like if you start to pick this movie apart, it will immediately fall apart 100%. But the monster stuff is a lot of fun. We get about 3 good bouts of Kong and Godzilla in this thing. Like 2 or 3 times they really swing at each other. Then we get a big fight at the end. It's worth mentioning the director of this movie, his name is Adam Wingard, did say one of these monsters is kind of going to definitively win in this mashup. It's not just going to be like a cop out. Andy, you'd agree that's mostly true. Like one of them basically wins, right? Out of the two of them.
Yeah, I feel like the movie wanted to kind of create a controversy of like, it's kind of like a fight that goes to the cards, and that'll be win by decision and see and kind of argue about who really won. But it's actually really kind of clear.
Yeah, like the poster says one will fall, and I think it's pretty clear which one that is. There's some fan theories about what may be going on in this movie, that maybe there's some third antagonist or something will show up. The two will have to team up against a fight. You just have to go see yourself and find out. All right. We're not spilling the beans here on Off Script, but for what it's worth, I think this movie does what it says it's going to do. It's monster versus monster, and it's supposed to be the two of them beating the hell out of each other. And normally I don't go for stuff like that, but this time, like, I really did, because if you just completely forget about the humans, you completely write off 35% of the movie, you'll actually really enjoy the rest of it. It's cool sticking with Kong on this journey, and then having Godzilla show up to antagonize, and then him swinging back on Godzilla. Like, you get some good environments, you get some good fights, you get some good moments, very cinematic, very bold. I mean, Godzilla v Kong, right? What more is there to say?
Not much. I think we're ready for recommendations.
Just about. A couple other things I have to say. I wanted to mention a child actor who's in this movie, and I can't find her name here on IMDb. Oh, Kaylee Hobble. She plays the young girl on Skull Island who can communicate with Kong. She's not given any lines because she's deaf, at least in the film. I don't know if she is in reality, but she does sign language throughout the movie. And that is kind of brilliant, because if you have a child communicating with Kong, right, this needs to be somebody who's got some cinematic presence. It can't just be an annoying kid. It needs to be somebody who audiences don't mind seeing on screen a couple of times. And one, being deaf, she can't flub any lines, because I mean, child actors, it's easy for child actors to flub lines. Like that happens all the time. Like, you'll have a child actor who's a little annoying, doesn't. One, that doesn't happen. Two, it's another brilliant opportunity for the sound design, because whenever we hear things from her perspective, it's the big roars and booms of our monster fights, but they're muffled and they're drawn down. Just some really clever opportunities at writing there. To have her communicate with Kong, who also can't speak English. Like, I was impressed with that. That was a smart angle.
Someone needs to make a parody called Sound of Monkey, like Sound of Metal. You see where I'm going there?
There's Sound of Music, but yes, I see where you're going there. Yeah. Additionally, I really enjoyed the sound design. I really enjoyed the cinematic presence of this movie. I'm really glad I watched it in a theater. My sister actually watched it almost the same time as we did, but at home on HBOMax. And afterwards we talked, and she was like, it was okay. I was like, in a theater, not too shabby. So Andy, with that, you ready for recommendations?
I am.
Andy, would you recommend Godzilla v Kong?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a fan of the monster movie genre, but it's a big spectacle, lots of effects, lots of action. It's why we go to the movies. It's one of the big reasons to go, and lots of people are going, and it was successful. And if you don't want to get out or aren't comfortable getting out, you can watch it in the comfortableness of your own home. So highly recommended. It is a little bit too long, and there's too many human subplots that kind of get convoluted, but just don't pay too much attention to that, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat. I'd recommend it, and I never recommend these monster movies. This one is, I think, the best of all of them. I think it's best enjoyed in a theater. If you have the means, you should totally go see this in a theater. I mean, it's not like Jurassic Park. It's not going to make you think about humanity and the wonders of science or anything, but there are cool monsters beating stuff up. They're surprisingly sympathetic. They're not just dark, tough, brooding, angry animals. Like, both of them seem to have some kind of thoughts and emotion behind them. And I feel like this is a movie made by people who are particularly passionate about this craft, people who I hope are passionate about the genre. Godzilla vs. Kong, surprisingly good. I'd recommend it in theaters if possible. That's the one caveat to that. Try not to watch it on HBOMax, because it's very grand in scope. I hope there are other films that are coming to HBOMax this year that we'll feel the same way about, namely things like Dune and Matrix 4, because
Yep.
Those feel very cinematic. And with that, we need to talk about movies that are coming up soon. A segment we have not done. Andy, I don't even think I have music for this segment. It's been so long since we've done this.
No, I was just thinking that too.
How does this go?
I don't remember, but I will introduce it.
Please.
Coming soon. So we're going to be discussing what's coming out in the next just 2 months. It's actually, even at the height of film, when things are normal, usually you can't see more than 2 months out. The date starts to shift too much. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the next 6 to 8 weeks. So first up on April 23rd is Mortal Kombat, which we're all looking forward to. That looks like a good time. That'll be in theaters and HBOMax, another simultaneous hybrid release. Zach, what do you think about that?
I'm looking forward to it. We watched the trailer in front of Godzilla vs. Kong and in the movie theater, and like my bar for success for that movie is so low. I'm like, you don't even have to do anything particularly impressive. Have some good fights, have some good matchups. There's already a lot of good characters in there. I like the look of it, the art direction, the lighting all seems solid. Put it in the main theme. All right, you got to have the 90s Mortal Kombat rock theme. You have to, and not in the credits. I want it in the film, like hardcore. I want like an awesome fight with that in front of it, preferably the final fight of the film. Give me the characters I love. How could you go wrong with Ninja palette swapped Ninja the movie? You know, it'd be great. It'd be great. What do you think?
I'm super psyched for it. I saw the original in theaters. Nice. It was terrible then. I particularly remember seeing the second one, which is even worse than the first one. And somehow it has like the greatest soundtrack or like opening like theme ever.
Dude, that music. Oh, it's so good.
Like they play a little bit at the end of the trailer of this one, and it just like, I got like pumped for it.
I want it so bad.
Good. So next up at the end of the month is The Mitchells versus the Machines, which is an animated feature. This was originally entitled Connected, and this was actually supposed to come out in the previous fall, last September. And this follows kind of a dysfunctional I'll just read it. A quirky dysfunctional family's road trip is upended when they find themselves in the middle of the robot apocalypse. So this starts to play out like a little bit like The Incredibles, or like, you know, this family who aren't getting along, a little bit dysfunctional, and kids going off to college, and then all of a sudden, like their technology takes over. So it kind of takes a hard left, which was pretty cool in the trailer. Like I said, it was supposed to come out back in September. It's now been sold to Netflix and will be on at the end of the month. Zach?
So this movie actually looks surprisingly good. I don't know if you remember way back when we talked about the trailer of Connected, but I remember, I mean, it had to have been over a year ago. Andy posted it in the trailer park on our weekly show outline, and I watched like, okay, what is this going to be? Some DreamWorks animated movie. All right, cool. It actually looks surprisingly good because it first and foremost looks like a movie about a father connecting with his kids and his kids connecting with dad and kind of reaching across that generational aisle within family. But then also has like this wacky horror element to it where the world is being taken over by like robot alien things. And I think that's what the best horror does, right? The best horror movies are horror movies where like the monster is like coincidentally there. The plot holds up by itself. The characters hold up by themselves. And here it does. Connected looks good. I'm glad it's coming to Netflix. I think that makes sense. Or sorry, Mitchells versus the Machines. I hope they can keep their marketing on brand because it is concerning they changed the name. That I hope is just indicative of they wanted something more catchy and not as generic. Like I hope that's not indicative of like this movie is terrible and we're trying to figure out a way to market it.
I think Connected is a little generic, and I think they wanted something that was a little bit more memorable and something that reflected the film a little bit better.
Yeah.
And moving on to the next kind of big feature in May. This is so strange because usually this would be like, you know, this is when Avengers came out, this kind of thing. But May 7th, the big release is Wrath of Man, which is the Jason Statham action vehicle, which we discussed last week, directed by Guy Ritchie. I'm generally not a huge fan of those, but this one actually kind of grabbed me. I like the trailer. I like seeing Jason Statham beat people up. So that kind of looks good to me. What do you think?
Yeah, Wrath the Man looks okay. I'm a big Guy Ritchie fan. I love his stuff going all the way back to like Rock and Rolla and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. His more recent work, The Gentleman and Aladdin, I was not super into, but I will pretty much go see his movies regardless, because I enjoy some of his earlier work so much. This is obviously a return to form. He's not in Britain this year. He's out in LA where this movie is taking place. And it definitely looks a bit like Guy Ritchie meets like Michael Bay. It looks like it's got that kind of explosive, high octane, saturated Hollywood energy. I like that it also stars Josh Hartnett. I'm anxious to see him in a role again. That guy's a leading man material, by God. Ultimately, Wrath of Man looks pretty good. I hope it's not bad, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm interested. I'm cautiously optimistic. Andy, Wrath of Man, you into it?
Yeah, I'm into it. I think I'll probably go see it for sure.
Yeah. All right, next up, we have Spiral coming out May 14th. This is the next book, the next movie in the Saw franchise. This is a bit of a spin-off, sequel, reboot, prequel kind of thing. You know, Hollywood likes to do those. This stars Chris Rock as a detective who is given a bit of a journey when he uncovers what appears to be evidence of a Jigsaw copycat following the gruesome Jigsaw murders as depicted in the previous Saw films. It also stars Samuel L. Jackson as, I believe, his father. And that's all we really know. The trailer has been kind of vague. We've seen a couple of them. We don't really know a lot about it. I know Chris Rock's very passionate about this. He got it on the writing on it. I don't know, man. If you told me Chris Rock was going to make a Saw movie, I'd have thought you were crazy. But not only is he making one, this might be the best one so far. So, Andy, what do you think of Spiral?
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. Like I was saying, it's got this weird star power because these films were actually known for being pretty not low budget, but having a B tier, C tier cast. And now we're getting two Hollywood A-listers doing a procedural cop drama in the Saw universe. Jigsaw is back.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. If we decide to see it, I don't think I would normally see it, but if we decide to do it for the show, I think I'll definitely be excited.
I'm a big fan of 1 and 2, so I'll definitely be pushing to it for the show. So for those of you who are Saw fans out there, I got your back. Next up, we are looking at Cruella on May 28th. It's going to be coming out in Disney Plus and in theaters. So you have the option to watch at home if you have a Disney Plus subscription. Although it will be an additional $30 with mentioning it's premium video on demand over there. So you got to spend 30 bones on top of your Disney Plus subscription or go see it in theaters with your friends. Cruella is, of course, the story of Cruella de Vil, played by Emma Stone, before she becomes the Cruella de Vil we've come to know and hate in the Disney films. I don't know how they're going to make a movie about a woman who goes on to kill puppies. That seems to be the move. It's got trailer's got very Joker energy, I guess. Andy, what do you think of Cruella?
It looks interesting, but this is the problem with all these Disney remakes is that they look really good, like great costumes, great makeup and hair and all that. But then they're also boring and generic and rehashes. Although their prequels have been better. The Maleficent films, I didn't see them, but I did hear that they were much better than kind of their shot for shot remakes. So it could be a little bit better. I'm definitely not paying $30 to see it. But it will be in theaters, and Disney is really sticking with this hybrid model.
Yeah, I'm not interested in their hybrid model, but I am interested in stupid Cruella. I mean, I hope it's good. I really do. I hope it comes out and it's like a straight banger and nobody expects it. But I'm a little skeptical right now. Emma Stone looks like she's having fun. The last movie we got on our coming soon list this week is A Quiet Place 2, coming out May 28th in theaters. This is, of course, a sequel to John Krasinski's A Quiet Place from a few years ago. You may remember seeing the trailers from this way back in 2018, I think, probably end of the year they were starting to advertise this movie, because this was supposed to come out in
this was supposed to come out a month after quarantine started.
Within 30 days of when quarantine really kicked off, this was supposed to come out. So this movie has been pushed back and back and back. It is a direct sequel to the original film. It immediately follows the events of the first film, following the Abbott family in their quest to leave their home and venture out into the world because they're not safe anymore, I think, from the monsters that can hear them but can't see them. So they have to be very quiet and find themselves a quiet place numero dos. The movie also stars Cillian Murphy in a new role. Not sure whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy, but we'll see. Andy, are you excited about A Quiet Place 2?
Yeah, absolutely. It had a really phenomenal trailer. I was a big fan of the first movie, and I was really excited for last year, for last spring, for it to come out so we could see it, and then we missed it, and they never wanted to push it to streaming. So I'm glad that it's in theaters.
I'm cautiously optimistic about this movie. Out of this whole list, this is the one I might be the least excited about. I think the first one was good, but it was a bit gimmicky. I think the second one, Krasinski needs to do some new things in the director's chair. It was a great first outing as a director for him, but I want to see some more suspense. I want to see a little more action would be nice. Now that we have a better understanding of the bad guys, the monsters from the first film, like I hope our characters will take that and use it, use that knowledge to their advantage. I want them to grow a little bit. I want them to change. I don't want it to be just another movie where they try to be as quiet as possible for 90 minutes. Like I want a little more oomph, a little more something. And I think that's what's going on here. I mean, I don't know, but we'll see. So, cautiously optimistic. We'll probably end up watching for the show. If you want to keep up with what we're watching and maybe hear our reviews for all of these things, subscribe to Off Script as soon as possible. You can do it right now, and we'll get new episodes to your phone every single Tuesday. And with that, we need to talk about our final review of the episode. Andy's graciously agreed to take the summary on this one. Andy, please take it away.
Concrete Cowboy. So this is a new Netflix drama starring Idris Elba, which is about these urban cowboys in northern Philadelphia, which are real people based on kind of this urban cowboy tradition. The story centers around a young black teen named Cole, played by Caleb McLaughlin of Netflix fame, Stranger Things,
yeah.
Which we mentioned earlier. Cole is a troubled teen. He is getting in lots of fights at school. He doesn't get along with his mom. They live in Detroit, and she's had enough. And so she drives him to his estranged father's house, Harp, played by Idris Elba, in northern Philly, and just drops him off and says, "Hey, I'll see you at the end of the summer. I can't take this anymore." She drops him off at his house, and he doesn't really have a lot. He's got a 1-bedroom apartment. He's got a sleep on the couch, or the son has to sleep on the couch. Cole doesn't like it. He's not having any of it. But he doesn't have a lot of choice, doesn't have a home. So he's got to kind of play by the rules. So he slowly, very begrudgingly begins to learn the ways of the urban cowboy. He learns about riding, about because they have like stables in the city. It's really a cool thing. And he learns about the neighborhood, the heritage, and meanwhile, there's it's a family drama because he doesn't get along with his father, but he kind of has. He's in a situation where he's not going to have anywhere to live if he doesn't. So it gets into the backstory and history of this movement of urban cowboys, as well as the other things going on in the neighborhood, drama between him and his father, all that. Kind of wrapped up in our story. So that's our story. I like this a lot more than I thought I would. Again, Netflix is kind of hit and miss, and I enjoyed it more than usual, and there's a lot to talk about. So, Zach, what'd you think?
So I enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. I think it still has some problems. I think the things this movie does best is kind of it's very affectionate look at a very real group of people through this kind of fictional lens that we're telling this story through. The movie is based on the Fletcher Street Riders, a real group of individuals in Philadelphia who own horses and basically live like cowboys. And it does a really good job of paying homage to them and even having some of them in the film, like play characters like themselves, similar to how Nomadland featured actual nomads. It does a really good job of kind of looking at that history and that heritage and taking a bow to it. What it doesn't do well is have like any kind of really interesting story woven through that. I think Caleb McLaughlin's character is a little dull. I think the spotlight is in the wrong place here, and I think the cinematography is really stunning, but ultimately, like, it seems to be lacking in some of the areas to really make it pop and really make it shine. It's a good movie. I don't think it's a great one, but I want to talk about what makes it really good. What's the best place to get started?
So I think our performances are really solid in this. Caleb McLaughlin has to pretty much carry the whole film, and he's got a lot going on. He's got he's living in this strange city, in this strange apartment with his estranged father. There's a literal horse that lives in the apartment, which is, and he's just like, what is this crazy, like, situation? Like, I'm not having it. And he's also, he ends up teaming up with, or kind of rediscovering a childhood friend named Smush, played by Jarrell Jerome, who we last saw in Oh, I'm blanking. Oh gosh,
I don't know, but he was good. What else did we see him in?
It was the best picture. I can't. Moonlight.
Moonlight. Oh my god, he was in Moonlight, wasn't he? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in Moonlight, and this is a source of tension because this childhood friend is very clearly a drug dealer, and he offers Cole a spot. He's like, "Hey, I need someone to help me out with what I'm doing. You can ride with me, and I'll protect you, and I'll show you the ropes." And initially, he wants, Cole. He's like, "Well, I don't want to live with my cowboy dad. He's got a horse in the apartment. I'm going to go with this guy." But well, especially Idris Elba knows it, and it's like, no, this isn't a good guy. Don't hang around with this guy. If you're going to hang around with this guy, you're not going to live in my house. So there's a lot of kind of tension going on, and Cole still hangs out with Smush just because he's earning money. He's kind of a cool guy. He, goes to cool parties. So that's kind of going on in the background as well. And Idris Elba does a good job at being like the older. I forgot we were talking about performances of being the kind of old cowboy dad who knows this world, this weary world.
Yeah, so I think I'm on the other side of the coin. I don't think Caleb McLaughlin was good in this movie, and maybe he'll win a freaking Golden Globe for it, and I'll be totally wrong. But he's just lacking in charisma. He's just not charismatic. And I get it. He's supposed to the character he's playing is not inherently a charismatic individual. He's supposed to be playing this character who gets in fights all the time and doesn't listen to his mom and doesn't have a dad in his life and just is bouncing from school to school. And he's going to be a washout and a nobody and fall through the cracks of society. He's supposed to be grumpy and mad all the time. And in a way, that makes sense. That's the character he should be playing. But that's not particularly exciting to watch as a protagonist. You just kind of have a dull character who doesn't talk to anybody and is mad. So yeah, when he comes in, when his mom, who obviously can't handle him, drops him off in town with his father, who is completely absent in his life and clearly does not want to spend any time with him. He's naturally mad, and he gets to the house, and his mom leaves him on the curb with a trash bag full of clothes and tears off into town, and he's got to go find his pops because his dad isn't even home. That's how little his dad actually cares. And through the movie, it comes out okay. There's some other stuff going on, and I think Idris Elba does a pretty good job of being a dad who just kind of doesn't want to have a kid. He doesn't want that to be a responsibility in his life. I can understand that character, but it makes for a pretty bitter group, cast of characters. Everybody in this movie is pretty frustrated, except of course, a lot of our other cowboys, a lot of the other people who live in this area with these two individuals, many of which are played by actual Fletcher Street cowboy writers, which was a surprise. I didn't find that out till the end of the film during the credits. They have some of them featured in there, and they do a great job of acting in this movie. I assume they were all actors, and it's oh no, none of them have acting backgrounds. I was surprised at how good they are at playing characters like themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really was a surprise to me as well, and I'm glad that they were using actual people from this community. Also of note is Method Man, who's where is he? He's named it. They have him as Method Man. But he's Cliff Smith. But Method Man is in this. He plays a cop, he's kind of neighborhood friendly. He's on a weird position because there's a subplot with the neighborhood kind of being frustrated with these horses in the stables, and they want to shut it down and get them moved. And Method Man, he's like, hey, you guys got to do something about this or they're going to kick you out. No one really wants to listen to him, and they kind of see him as kind of the enemy, but he's a big influence in the movie as well.
Yeah, he's actually really good in this movie. He plays a really good dichotomy for our characters who are kind of living off the grid and living in this, living like cowboys is really what they're trying to do, and kind of living in a bit of this fantasy. And he understands that while that's his environment when he's at home, when he goes out in the world for a profession, that is clearly not the way the world is. And he kind of has to walk this line of telling them, hey, you should live life and be happy, but also you got to follow the rules, and sometimes that's not always what's best for you at the time, but that's the way it is. So he's got a really interesting character. Yeah, Idris Elba plays an interesting character. Lorraine Toussaint plays neighbor Nessie. She's really good. I wasn't really pleased with Caleb McLaughlin, but I think it's the character. I think it's the way he's written. I don't think it's his ability as an actor, because he's a lot more charismatic on Stranger Things. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're really supposed to like him. I mean, he's a troubled teen who like gets in fights. You know, he's not exactly a sympathetic character.
So let's talk about our Cowboys in Philadelphia, because this is modern day, right? This is supposed to be and we have them riding around wearing cowboy hats and taking care of horses inside of apartment buildings.
Yeah, I mean that's what's really crazy is that there is a stable amidst all these apartments in northern Philadelphia, which is a very densely kind of packed city, and so it's crazy that there are horses there and that people ride them, and there's it's a whole culture.
Yeah, I know this is based on a book called Ghetto Cowboy, and I'm looking for the author's name right now, but I don't see it. But apparently, how this came about, one of the writers of the screenplay, possibly the director, Ricky Staub, was driving around Philadelphia at one point for something, and he saw a few of these guys on horses, and he was just like, "What is the story behind them?" And that's basically how this movie got made. He asked around and got turned on to this book, and eventually would go on to make the film. And I think that's kind of a good metaphor for what's happening in the movie. I don't think like the kind of central conflict with Caleb and his dad or Caleb, Cole and his dad and his mom, like none of that was particularly interesting to me. It's the Cowboys, right? That's the title of the movie, Concrete Cowboy. It's the title of the book, Ghetto Cowboy. Like that's ultimately what's interesting. The rest of this is just kind of a fictional wrapping around it to give us a through line. That's a story that we can kind of follow. And Caleb McLaughlin serves as a really good vehicle for the audience because he's new and doesn't understand this environment of kind of urban cowboys to kind of slide in and kind of take this mantle and start to kind of work with his father. And over the summer, as the two of them kind of grow and I guess bond in their own way, that you really do get some good opportunities to get to know them and get to know this world, make it feel very grounded and real, very affectionate, I think.
Yeah, it's a coming of age story, and Caleb's got to start from the bottom. He's got to start. He starts shoveling horse manure. He's got to clean out the stables, but it's a little bit of kind of it takes a village, because you're right. He doesn't really get on with his father, and they don't really solve a lot of issues early on. But there are other people he meets within the community, other people that are riding, other people, or like Method Man's police character. He meets other people that help him to figure things out, help him to become a more well-adjusted person.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, writing aside, I think it's worth mentioning in this film is the cinematography in this movie is really stunning. It's really good. I felt like the editor and the cinematographer were at odds with one another because there's certain scenes where something particularly profound happens or two characters in an argument and, things where you want to have some visual weight to what's happening situations. There's one scene in particular where a character is gravely injured. And the scene is over in like 25 seconds, but it's shot so well that most of the movie is handheld. It's a really shaky handheld. It makes it feel very real, very grounded. And a lot of it's really good work, really good lighting, really good camera work. And these shots just fly by. Like the editor just cuts from one to another. It's like, hold on a second. Like let this stuff hang out a minute. I think this movie could have been 10 minutes longer. And I don't know if that would have hurt the pacing because again, I didn't really find myself kind of getting on board with this kind of paint by numbers plot. But I did really like the look of this movie. It's really good work. I wish I could have seen more of it.
Yeah, I actually felt it was a little long. Like I think I got about 90 minutes in before I whipped up my phone. So that's
you're watching at home. That's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the new metric is how long till I feel I need to grab my phone. But yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, most of this worked pretty well. There's main plots or subplots. They wrap up nicely. It's coming of age story. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I wish I had, I don't know, I guess for such an intricate kind of setting, for an intricate wrapping for this film, I really hope the plot would have a little bit more like bones to it. I just kind of hope to do something different. And it starts to feel like it's in this rut that I've seen before, and that's okay because the story of this film, like the heart of this film, the meat of this film, this kind of group of individuals who live off the grid and find themselves, defying what people think of them and not caring what people think and living the best way they know how and kind of respecting this heritage they have. It was really inspiring. Like that stuff really works. I just didn't enjoy the plot as much, but that's okay. I think Concrete Cowboy does a lot of things really well. I'm glad I watched it. It reminds me a little bit of like Mudbound on Netflix from a couple of years ago. Really solid movie, just doesn't quite tip over the ledge to get into theaters, and like that's kind of a shame. But
right.
I like this movie a lot. Andy, you ready for recommendations?
I am.
Andy, would you recommend Concrete Cowboy?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Good performances, good family drama, really interesting and unique culture. These Fletcher Street writers that it talks about, and just the whole idea of urban cowboys and having actual cowboys and horses and stables within the city. Really kind of interesting. Good performance from Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin as well. So yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't know if I would say it's a ringing recommendation from me, but it is number 2 in America for a reason on Netflix right now. You will probably see it on your home screen the next few days. Think about giving it a shot. At least start it. At least start it and get 20 minutes in this movie and tell me you don't want to watch more. Like it's a very intriguing first act. The second act gets it moving. Third act was okay. It didn't quite end the way I hoped it would, but that's part of what's exciting about Concrete Cowboy. So go ahead and give it a watch if you have the means. It's available on Netflix. Meanwhile, Godzilla is available on HBOMax and in theaters. And that about wraps our show. Andy, what are we watching next week?
So we're watching a new sci-fi film called Voyagers, which we talked about just either last week or the week before. And this is the one where there's a bunch of kids out in space, and Colin Farrell is the one adult kind of in charge of them, and then they take a pill or a drug to make them kind of emotionless and basically robots, and they stop taking this drug and eventually kind of lose control, and this is all happening in space. So that's gonna be in theaters, and then we're also going to watch a listener recommendation from Jordan Sutton called The Clove Hitch Killer, which is on Hulu.
Yes, Jordan is also the same Jordan who commented earlier on Facebook during the show live. Jordan, thanks for weighing
that's
in.
right.
We are going to watch The Clove Hitch Killer. I'm going to be honest, I don't know anything about this movie. It looks all right. That's what I think. But he recommended it. Jordan went to school with me back in the day, so I'm totally good for watching that. So Jordan will let you know what we think next week when we watch The Clove Hitch Killer. Also, one other bit of feedback. We got a really awesome question via email this week from Jamal Park at Mapstone Park. You know who you are, Jamal. Thanks for writing in. I'm sorry we didn't talk about that this week. Andy and I talked it over, and we were like, we need to come up with some better answers because Jamal sent a surprisingly profound question. So we'll be, I think, addressing that next week. So we did get it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you writing in. Keep doing it. And if you want to write in like Jamal or Jordan, you totally can at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. You can also comment on Facebook where we do the show live every single Tuesday. You can weigh in on our live show. You can like and comment and follow our Facebook page for updates. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube where we post live streams of our show after the fact. And we're on all of our normal podcast outlets, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. You know the places. You're probably subscribed to one already. But if you're not, you could really do us a favor and subscribe to the show as well. That would help a ton. You can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com. And if you have the means, definitely just subscribe. Really. That's the big thing. If you're not subscribed to the show, subscribe to get new episodes of Offscript every single week straight to you on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also rate and review, but we'll save that for next week. Let's just worry about subscribing right now. We'll just worry about that one. And with that, I think that about wraps everything. Eddie, am I missing anything? I feel like there was something else we were supposed to talk about. Am I crazy?
No, not that I can think of. I did want to mention the Oscars are at the end of the month on the 25th, so we'll be talking about that in a few weeks.
Ooh, Oscar talk. Watch out. That's going to be fun. All right. Well, from all of us at Offscript, the home of Bold Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.